Hello, my name is Anjani Segrist, and today we're going to get into some of the Scorpio mysteries as they relate to death, birth, and sexuality. So we can use the astrological wheel to connect these pieces together. And what I like to use astrologically is Pisces, the 12th house, also Scorpio, the 8th house, and the planet Pluto, sometimes Neptune also. So, this is a very deep and intense topic, and it's not meant to have definitions. Even those, what I just mentioned astrologically, are the aspects that have the least amount of tangibility in the middle world reality. We can connect with these states through ecstatic states, orgasm, sleep, uh, sexuality, dream realm. And all of these things are not talked about. We're not comfortable with it. And not only I'm comfortable with it for the most part, but there's not very many words that we can use to touch into these places. But what I want to talk about today is how those ecstatic states in sexuality and in sleep, so in the dream realm and in orgasm, that we can sort of have a healing experience or an integration experience. So for me, healing means wholeness and integration. So bringing all these energies together and not having to call them good or bad or place any sort of a judgment on them, just bringing us back to wholeness. And using the astrological chart is a very, very good tool for doing that, working one on one. So I'm not going to get too much into that astrological aspect of it. Just want to let it be known that there is a tool where we can actually go back in time to certain events that happen that we feel sort of frozen in that moment. We can go back astrologically and look at what cycles you might have been in and get back in touch with that moment, and through our adult understanding and wherever you are now in your current phase of life and maturity, being able to have a whole big picture perspective on that particular timing. Also, on the astrological chart, we can see where your personal planets, Venus, Mars, the sun, the moon, your rising sign, and Mercury, Jupiter, we can use too, to see how those pieces fit into your astrological makeup. So, the thing I want to talk about now is birth. Everybody was born. So, everybody was carried by a woman in her womb. And the way you were born, everybody has a different birth story. And I've given birth 3 times, all 3 of them completely different experiences. Also, I've done a lot of rebirthing of my own self and asking my mother all these questions and piecing together my own birth experience. So I recommend doing that, by the way. Just if your mom is still alive, asking her to write out her birth experience, her pregnancy experience, how she felt, and sort of using that in your own journey of reclamation. So, going back to the womb, we were all carried there. We were at first this little sea creature in a way, floating around in amniotic fluid, growing, experiencing, and then at some point having that contraction that brings us into a descent into the birth canal. Not everybody goes through this. Some people have the incision and are lifted out, and that's a whole nother topic that I'm not covering today. So we're going into the descent of the birth canal, where this is the child's head being birthed. So we get into this place where we're squeezed. It's dark. We might have had the cord wrapped around our neck. We had this pressure, constriction on our body. And this lasts for different amounts of time for everybody. And then that sacred spiral where we're released and emerged and come into this position where, we were head down, we have this spiral, and then we're upright. And the rest of our lives, our head will be in this position. We're no longer sea creatures. We're no longer wrapped in this amniotic fluid and being able to have, I don't want to call it breathing underwater because you took your first breath at this moment. So now we're breathing. We died to our nature as a sea creature and are at the same time birthed into our existence as a breathing creature. So that's our first initiation with death and birth. So going back to that, we can assume that there was some intensity, maybe pain, maybe pleasure. And from a birthing mother's perspective, I can say that there was definitely the most intense and exquisite pain and pleasure all at the same time. I had 3 births, natural birth experiences, and definitely felt that I was going to die. Actually, at one point, I knew I was going to die in my second birth. And there's also not quite the same as an orgasm, but that same feeling of, retention of breath, and then this release where, the birth causing or setting off this sensation of like ultimate release. So this has been, can be associated with an orgasm. And for some women, they would say that it is like the greatest orgasm they ever had. I don't have that in my memory as, my memory of orgasms, being, I've had those ecstatic experiences, but I don't recall that with birth. With birth, it's more like, to me, it feels more like this fierce warrior type of energy where I, sort of get through this intensity and seeing the baby. I can't quite relate it to an orgasm, but it's something completely different for me. But some mothers will say it is like an orgasm, or they call it an orgasmic birth. So now going into how we can sort of have an integration or a healing of having a healing experience, connecting with death, birth, and sex. This goes more into the realm of Pisces and the 12th house, where that collective unconscious or the collective consciousness of where, every trauma that our mother and her mother and her mother, every ecstasy and trauma that they ever felt, spiraling down and flooding into the collective consciousness. That when we get into those ecstatic states, that we can tap into that level of energy and sort of bringing that all to the present moment, healing everything that's happened in our perceptible experiences, things that we're able to perceive. So yes, this is possible. Yes, we can have this integration moment. Not saying that you need to, and I'm also not saying that it's necessary. It is possible for everybody, because anything that's possible to one person emotionally and energetically is possible to all of us. That's just a basic sort of law of embodiment. There's not one person who's able, special and able to do things that the rest of us can't. So yes, I believe that this is a possibility for us all to go into this ecstasy and